Why do good people often find themselves at the mercy of others? Why do they get hurt, manipulated, and left behind while those who lie, cheat, and manipulate rise to the top? Fyodor Dostoevsky, in his profound novel The Idiot, explores this unsettling paradox through Prince Myshkin, a man whose goodness and innocence make him a fool in a world that thrives on selfishness and cunning. Myshkin's unwavering compassion and honesty highlight a harsh reality. Goodness, when misunderstood, can become a weakness in a society that rewards ruthlessness. But what if being good isn't enough? What if kindness without boundaries leads to self-destruction? Dostoevsky forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth sometimes. Being too good makes you vulnerable. In this video, we'll uncover the hidden dangers of excessive goodness and why it often backfires. We'll explore why society perceives pure-hearted individuals as naive and weak, and how blind trust can lead to devastating consequences. As we break down these powerful lessons, you'll discover how Dostoevsky's insights are still relevant today. So, buckle up and join us as we explore why good people are fools, and prepare to question everything you thought you knew about goodness and power. Imagine a world where someone genuinely believes that kindness can heal all wounds and honesty can mend broken hearts. Prince Myshkin, the protagonist of Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Idiot, embodies this ideal. He is a man whose heart is pure, whose intentions are noble, and whose compassion knows no limits. But instead of being celebrated, Myshkin's innocence is misunderstood, exploited, and ultimately leads to his downfall. In real life, we've all encountered good people who go out of their way to help others, never ask for anything in return, and always see the best in everyone. While these qualities are admirable, they can also be dangerous. Just like Myshkin, such individuals often fail to recognize hidden agendas and malicious intent. Their trust blinds them to deception, leaving them vulnerable to betrayal. Take the story of a friend who always lends money to those in need, only to be ghosted when they ask for repayment, or the kind-hearted colleague who covers for others at work but is overlooked for promotions. Like Myshkin, these individuals operate under the assumption that goodness will eventually be rewarded, but reality often proves otherwise. Myshkin's unwavering compassion becomes his weakness. His inability to set boundaries and recognize manipulation allows people like Rogun Chehin and Nastasia to drag him into a web of chaos. His goodness doesn't save him, it destroys him. Dostoevsky's message is clear: purity without wisdom can be self-destructive. But why does this happen? Why does society mistake innocence for foolishness? This brings us to the next critical question: the blind spot of goodness. Why naivety invites manipulation? In the following section, we'll explore how naivety turns well-intentioned individuals into easy targets for those with darker motives. Stay with us as we uncover the hidden dangers of blind trust. Have you ever noticed how the kindest, most selfless people often get taken advantage of? It's as if their goodness acts like a magnet, attracting those who see their kindness as a weakness. Prince Myshkin from The Idiot is the perfect example. His unwavering faith in people blinds him to their true intentions, making him easy prey for manipulation. But this is not just fiction, this happens all around us in everyday life. Consider the friend who always says yes to every request. They help others with genuine care, expecting nothing in return. Yet, over time, people begin to expect their generosity, taking advantage of their good nature. Or think of the employee who trusts their boss implicitly, only to be overburdened with extra work while others skate by. These individuals are trapped by their own goodness, unable to see that their kindness is being weaponized against them. Why does this happen? Naivety often leads good people to assume that others operate with the same level of sincerity. They fail to recognize ulterior motives because they themselves do not harbor them. This blind spot makes them vulnerable, as manipulators know that good-hearted individuals are less likely to question deceit. Like Myshkin, they believe in the inherent goodness of people, a belief that blinds them to the reality of human nature. Moreover, good people often find it difficult to say no. They worry about disappointing others or being perceived as selfish. This opens the door for manipulators to exploit their empathy, guilt-tripping them into compliance. Over time, this leads to emotional exhaustion and disillusionment. But why does society treat such goodness with such disdain? Why do pure-hearted individuals, like Myshkin, often end up isolated or ridiculed? The answer lies in why society resents goodness, the fear of being outshined. In the next section, we will explore how society's discomfort with true goodness stems from a deep-rooted fear of being morally overshadowed. Don't miss this eye-opening revelation. Why do truly good people often end up isolated, ridiculed, or even hated? It seems counterintuitive. Shouldn't society admire and celebrate those who embody kindness, compassion, and moral excellence? Yet, more often than not, these individuals become targets of resentment. Fyodor Dostoevsky's Prince Myshkin in The Idiot is a prime example. Despite his purity and noble heart, he is mocked, manipulated, and ultimately cast aside by society. But this phenomenon isn't confined to literature. It plays out in real life all the time. Think about the colleague who always goes the extra mile, stays late to help others, and never seeks credit. Instead of being appreciated, they are often met with envy or suspicion. Their goodness unintentionally highlights the shortcomings of others, making people feel inadequate in comparison. Rather than aspiring to be better, many choose the easier path, resenting the one who makes them feel morally inferior. This resentment is rooted in a subconscious fear of being outshined. When someone embodies pure goodness, it acts as a mirror, forcing others to confront their own flaws and moral compromises. Instead of inspiring change, this reflection breeds discomfort and hostility. People don't like feeling morally inadequate, so they project their frustration onto the person who unknowingly exposes their weaknesses. Furthermore, society tends to view extreme goodness as naive or unrealistic. In a world where self-interest often prevails, genuine altruism is seen as a threat to the status quo. People question the motives behind excessive virtue, assuming that no one can be that selfless without an ulterior agenda. This skepticism creates a barrier between truly good individuals and society, isolating them even further. As a result, goodness becomes a lonely path. Those who strive for moral perfection often find themselves alienated, left to navigate a world that doesn't fully understand or appreciate them. This leads us to the cost of moral perfection, why excessive virtue breeds isolation. In the next section, we will explore how the pursuit of moral perfection, while noble, can push people further away from the very society they seek to uplift. Don't miss this thought-provoking exploration. Is it possible to be too good for the world? While we are often taught that virtue is the highest ideal, those who pursue moral perfection can find themselves in a paradox: admired but alienated, respected yet lonely. Fyodor Dostoevsky's Prince Myshkin from The Idiot epitomizes this dilemma. His relentless commitment to kindness and compassion sets him apart, yet it also isolates him, leaving him misunderstood and alone. But this is not just a fictional narrative, it's a reality that unfolds in everyday life. Consider the story of someone who always puts others first, sacrificing their own needs to ensure the happiness of those around them. They're the friend who listens without judgment, the family member who offers unconditional support, and the coworker who takes on extra work without complaint. But over time, this relentless pursuit of goodness often creates distance. People begin to take their kindness for granted, and rather than feeling gratitude, they feel an unspoken discomfort. The person's goodness becomes a silent reminder of what others lack, leading to subtle alienation. Excessive virtue also creates unrealistic expectations. When someone consistently embodies moral perfection, they set a standard so high that others feel unable to meet it. Rather than striving to rise to that level, many choose to distance themselves to avoid feeling inferior. As a result, the virtuous person finds themselves standing alone, caught between their ideals and the harsh reality of human imperfection. Moreover, moral perfection often means sacrificing personal boundaries. The desire to always do the right thing leaves little room for self-care, leading to emotional and physical exhaustion. When people constantly give without receiving, they become emotionally depleted, further deepening their sense of isolation. This relentless pursuit of goodness ultimately becomes a double-edged sword. While it elevates the individual morally, it separates them from the world they wish to serve. This brings us to the next dilemma: when empathy becomes self-destruction, the dangers of overextending compassion. In the next section, we will explore how unchecked empathy, when taken to extremes, can erode one's well-being and lead to unintended consequences. Stay tuned for this eye-opening discussion. Can too much empathy be harmful? While compassion and understanding are often seen as virtues, excessive empathy can become a silent destroyer. Imagine constantly feeling the pain of others, absorbing their struggles as your own. Over time, this emotional burden becomes too heavy to bear, leaving the empath drained, anxious, and emotionally depleted. Fyodor Dostoevsky's Prince Myshkin, with his boundless compassion in The Idiot, embodies this dilemma. His deep empathy allows him to see the suffering of others, but his inability to set limits leads to his own emotional collapse. In real life, consider the story of a caregiver who devotes their life to an ailing family member. They neglect their own needs, sacrificing sleep, health, and personal time to provide comfort. While their intentions are noble, this constant giving leaves them physically and emotionally exhausted. Eventually, they reach a breaking point where their own well-being is compromised, rendering them unable to continue helping. This is the hidden danger of unchecked empathy. It creates a cycle where the giver becomes a victim of their own compassion. Overextending compassion also opens the door for manipulation. When someone is overly empathetic, they often struggle to say no, fearing they might hurt others. This makes them an easy target for people who take advantage of their kindness, whether in personal relationships or professional settings. An empath who lacks boundaries can become a pawn in the hands of those who exploit their goodwill. Moreover, constantly absorbing the emotional pain of others can lead to compassion fatigue, where the empath becomes emotionally numb. They begin to feel detached, burned out, and even resentful of those they once tried to help. This emotional exhaustion prevents them from continuing their mission of goodness, ultimately defeating the purpose of their empathy. To protect oneself from this downward spiral, it becomes essential to find balance. Finding balance, why boundaries are crucial for protecting goodness, is the next critical step. In the following section, we will explore how setting firm emotional boundaries not only safeguards one's well-being, but also enhances their ability to offer genuine, sustainable compassion. Stay tuned to learn how protecting yourself allows you to protect others more effectively. Is it possible to be good without being used? Many people believe that true kindness means always being available, always saying yes, and putting others first. But in reality, without boundaries, goodness becomes a liability. Imagine a river with no banks. Its water would overflow, causing destruction instead of nourishment. Boundaries are the invisible walls that channel kindness in the right direction, preventing it from becoming self-destructive. Consider the story of Anna, a dedicated volunteer who spent years helping her community. She was the go-to person for every event, fundraiser, and crisis. At first, Anna felt fulfilled, but over time, the constant demands wore her down. Her exhaustion led to resentment, and eventually, she withdrew from the very causes she once loved. Her goodness, unchecked by boundaries, had burned her out. Anna's experience is a reminder that when we give endlessly without limits, we use their ability to give at all. Boundaries protect goodness by ensuring that acts of compassion come from a place of strength, not depletion. When we say no to things that drain us, we create space to say yes to things that truly matter. Healthy boundaries allow us to choose when, how, and to whom we give our time and energy. This not only protects our mental and emotional health, but also ensures that our kindness remains genuine and impactful. Moreover, setting boundaries teaches others how to respect and value us. When people see that we prioritize our well-being, they are less likely to take advantage of our goodwill. Boundaries do not make us selfish, they make our goodness sustainable. True compassion thrives when it's nurtured by balance, not fueled by guilt or obligation. Without boundaries, goodness becomes naive, but when we learn to protect ourselves, we empower our kindness to flourish. Redefining goodness, can kindness survive without foolishness? Explores this idea further. In the next section, we'll dive into whether goodness can exist without the naive self-sacrifice that often accompanies it. Can one be truly kind without being taken for granted? Let's uncover the answer. Can you be truly kind without being a fool? Society often romanticizes selfless kindness, where people sacrifice their own well-being for the sake of others. But is this sustainable? The real question is, can goodness survive without naivety? Imagine giving someone endless second chances, believing they will change, only to be repeatedly hurt. Does continuing to give make you blind? Take the story of Daniel, a generous and trusting man who always helped his friends, no matter the cost. When his colleague Mark fell into financial trouble, Daniel lent him money twice, and then several more times. Mark never repaid the loans and eventually stopped acknowledging Daniel altogether. Daniel's kindness, unfiltered by wisdom, turned into a pattern of exploitation. His goodwill was mistaken for weakness, and his generosity was abused. Goodness doesn't mean becoming a doormat. True kindness requires discernment, understanding when to give and when to step back. It's not about shutting people out, but about recognizing when your kindness is enabling harmful behavior. When kindness is tempered with wisdom, it becomes a powerful force that uplifts both the giver and the receiver. Boundaries, as discussed earlier, play a key role here. When we redefine goodness to include self-respect and discernment, we protect ourselves from being used while still maintaining a compassionate heart. This shift challenges the notion that being good means saying yes to everything. Instead, it highlights that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. Moreover, kindness without wisdom is unsustainable. If you continually pour from an empty cup, you eventually run dry. But when kindness is guided by understanding, it remains strong and genuine. It allows us to give from a place of abundance, not depletion. As we redefine goodness, we realize that kindness doesn't have to come at the expense of self-respect. Being wise doesn't make you less compassionate, it makes your compassion more effective. So, can kindness truly survive without foolishness? Or is it possible that wisdom and compassion, when combined, create a more profound form of goodness? As we conclude this journey, ask yourself, is it possible to be truly good without being naive? Or is wisdom the missing ingredient that makes kindness truly powerful?